वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So what is being talked here is that atha idanim para yat uchyate yaya tad vakshamanam visheshanam aksharam adhigamyate he is talking as prapyate. This is what I was trying to elucidate and unfold here. Adhigamyate, even though the verb to go, gam gacchati, is used, abhigamyate is reached, is used in the passive. But where is the reaching? Who is reaching out? You. What is at the end of the reaching? You. Who, there is no reacher, reached, reaching that is outside of you. There is no reaching. Even though the word to go is used, the to go is in the sense of gaining something that's already gained, that is already you, not going somewhere to get something else. Yeah. We also say this in English. Did you get it? Means what? Did you understand? So like that. So this prapti artha eva, and to buttress that argument, because this is where a lot of mistakes are made, because one is oriented towards action naturally. Because why? Having spent so much time in ignorance, one is already oriented towards action. Because ignorance makes you act, in all kinds of nonsensical ways. So ignorance is itself an act, and it makes you act like a clown. And so one is oriented towards this doership, towards being a karta, bhokta. First karta, and then what? You have to eat your karma phalas, then you become bhokta. Then, whatever I ate was not good tasting, so I have to add something more. Then you become karta again, then you become bhokta again. It's again like cooking. You add some chili. And then what happens? Then the Indians add one potato, 2-3 potatoes you boil and add. Then, all bland. Then you add some more salt. Oh, so much salt. Then you add some coconut milk, because that is again another bland thing. It will absorb all the mistakes of the cooking. Then something is not right. Then you add some more masala, garam masala you add. And then, oh my God, you have to leave the room, it's so hot. And then what do? Everything else you have used up. Then you just buy a big packet of tofu, because tofu is the blandest thing on the planet. Yeah. And then you pour the tofu, the entire packet, you cut it into pieces and pour it there. And then, nobody else will know, because they are not Indian. It's okay, it will go. With that confidence you serve. So you see, when you put the chili, what were you? Karta or bhokta? Karta. Then you tasted it, bhokta. Then bhokta did not like what was the karanam, and the, kartritvam, whatever was done was not like. That karyam was not liked. And then therefore what? Then added what? What did you add at first? Potatoes. When you were adding potatoes, were you karta or bhokta? Karta. Then you tasted it, what is this? Then you added some bhokta. Then you added some more salt, karta. Then you said, oh my God, so salty, who will eat this? Then bhokta. Then you added coconut milk, karta. Then you tasted it and it tasted just like, eating cardboard, bhokta. And then, all kinds of faces were made. Yeah, from sad to mad to, and the eyes also started watering, bhokta, bhokta, bhokta. Eyes had already watered when you had chopped the onions, And then what? That time you were karta and bhokta at once. Yeah. Instantly. And then what? Then it became inedible. After coconut milk, it started to taste like, some Pepto-Bismol. So then what did Then you added a handful of garam masala. You forgot that it was a new kind and you had never tried it. So right out of the packet, without smelling or tasting it, you added it. And then you were, the fumes of it came and made you sneeze. You had to leave the room, bhokta. Then since you had left the room, you used the time well and you got the tofu from the other room, karta. Then you opened the tofu. Tofu is so bland. You may as well peel off that plastic and then throw away the tofu and put the plastic. It's the same thing. It's that bland. So you put the tofu, and then what were you when you were putting the tofu? Karta. Then you all invited your friends and enjoyed this, nameless concoction, bhokta. Then after that you have to do what? After enjoying a meal, what do you have to do? What did you do yesterday after the food? Clean up. Karta. And then bhokta. Karta, bhokta, karta, bhokta, karta, bhokta, karta, bhokta. So every going is fraught with a return, correct? And the returns are never according to what you deserve. The returns are always less than what you think you deserve. And the returns sometimes are not there. They just turn, they don't return. So because you don't like the returns, you have to fix the turning again. And you fix it again, and then what happens? And then you are again in a big fix. That's why it's called fix. And this fix, in the name of this fix is what? Samsara. Yeah, what is samsara? Samsara, with sorrow. Yes. Samsara plus sorrow is called samsara. Very, very sorry. Samsari. One becomes a samsari. Yes. Somewhat sorry, samsari. So this is what it is. So many ways you can resolve that compound. So this is what happens. Karta, bhukta, karta, bhukta, karta, bhukta. And this is like a ping pong, Somebody sent me one, what is that for? That one video in the email. This is what happens when you have children in your life. They keep sending, this is the way they can relate. So this teenager sent me one video. They are playing ping pong. You know ping pong? A small ball table tennis is called ping pong. So two people are playing table tennis. And there are 3 kittens watching. Oh. You can only imagine what it will be like. And they are going like this. This is what the samsari is. Karta bhokta, karta bhokta. Endlessly. This samsara is like table tennis. You cannot miss. You are always on the run. You have to run from this side of the table to that side of the table. And until and unless you are ready to table the entire samsara, you have to be caught in this whole thing. This is the whole situation. And so therefore, this knowledge comes as a cool shower on a hot tropical karta bhokta day because one is afflicted by this kartritvam and bhoktritvam. Being a karta is not easy. Being the bhokta is easier, less easier still. In fact, both of them are, there is nothing called ease. Either in kartritvam or bhoktritvam, there is only dis-ease. In fact, that's why samsara is called bhava roga, the disease of, being. The disease of trying to become something that you're not. That is the disease. There's a lot of unease. There's a lot of dis-ease. There is no ease. This is what it is. And so the ease comes as an instantaneous cool shower on a hot, parched jiva, parched and dehydrated by kartritvam and bhoktritvam. Because being a karta and bhokta sucks you dry of all the prana you thought you had. And then what to do? Go for some pranic healing. That's all. Get some prana back or do some pranayama. But really speaking, that's like a band-aid. But what you need is an immediate release, immediate relief and a permanent release. Both those are possible, and that is the nature of this knowledge, is that immediately it sets your head correct, in the correct direction of orienting you towards the proper understanding of who you are, so that all your actions have no other reason for their being other than to contemplate upon this knowledge. If the knowledge doesn't take place, it's not the fault of the knowledge, It's not anyone's fault. It's just that the raga dvesha pollution is a little high and it has fogged and smogged the surface of this vision. I'm not able to see the vision because the raga dvesha smog has, even though the smog gives way for good sunsets, we hear, but still, that's again within samsara. Yes. So the smog has afflicted my vision, so much so that I'm not able to see the truth of who I am or understand the truth of who I am. So if I have to do, even if the knowledge doesn't take root immediately, it helps me to corral my actions in the most useful way so that I adopt a lifestyle which is conducive to assimilating this knowledge. That is very important. So, the moment one gains the knowledge, there is really nothing to do. Whatever you do is for fun and you are really not interested in the outcome. But if that knowledge is not taking place because of ragadvesha inhibitions and blocks, then all my karma, it gives me a direction for my actions, because my actions go to purify that inner makeup so that this knowledge is coming to sit more and more. The knowledge becomes a journey. The gain of the knowledge becomes a journey of clarity. Endless clarity, growing clarity. So then what I can do is that if I'm not ready to give up the action, I can use the action to prepare me for the knowledge. That is what it makes, so that all the useless going around in circles is gone. So adhigamyate means understood. And even if the understanding is not taken place, still the karma is not going to produce the understanding. Karma is going to help you to gain the preparation needed for the understanding. And so, then what? And then he gets all grammatical on us. Adhipurvasya gamehe prayashah praptyarthatvat. So if somebody asked him why adhigamyate means only the gain of the knowledge, why it is gain means it's not really, it doesn't involve going anywhere, and that he gives the meaning. He says whenever we say adhi plus gam, that means what? Not to reach, but to understand. The adhi upasarga makes you see that the word to go is used in the sense of to understand. Nacha parapraptehe avagamarthasya bhedah asti. Now he explains himself. This is what happens to the teacher of Vedanta. Everyone finds, we all find ourselves in his situation, constantly having to explain the Shastra and then having to explain our own words which we have used, because this is the problem, that which is understood. When you say gain, okay, to go is explained by the word to gain. To gain is also fraught with something being other than you. I gained this, what did I call it? Non-mango. Yeah, I had come to, non-mango state. So I gained this non-mango. So the non-mango is not non-different from me, it is different from me, and I gain it. So here he says both the words gain and to go are used in the sense of understanding. Don't think that there is something to gain other than you or somewhere to go outside of you. Okay, there is nothing more than that. That's all it is, Avidyayaha apayah evahi parapraptihi arthantaram. Yeah, parapraptihi na arthantaram. There is a na there. Yeah. Parapraptihi na arthantaram. Yeah. So he says avidyayaha apayaha eva. Apaya means removal. Removal of avidya is the cause for gaining para. Correct? So para is not something new that is being drilled in the head. It is the old ragadveshas along with the ignorance which was their cause being removed. So the removal of ignorance is equal to the gain of the knowledge. So whenever we say gain of the knowledge, Adi Shankara says here, what we mean is that the ignorance, self-ignorance is taken away. So don't think that Paraprapti means you have to sit like Vishnu Prapti and you have to go and meditate upon Shiva or meditate upon Vishnu, and Vishnu darshan dega, he will give darshan with Shankha and Chakra in hand and Gada in the other hand, and with the final hand he says Ajao, he shows his own feet, come, and that is how it is. You know, two hands Shankha and Chakra, and one hand sometimes is down, he is either holding the Gada, the mace, or it is in Abhaya. Don't fear me, come, I'll show you fearlessness. And what should I do to gain this fearlessness? The other hand shows the lower left hand shows the feet. Come to my feet, take refuge in me, and you will have fearlessness. So, you know, it's not like that. That is not the, you know, some Vishnu, you have to sit and meditate with these, you know, evam lakshanaha, evam gunaha, anvitaha, you know, endowed with these qualities. I have to meditate upon him and then he will come and give me some paraprapti. Here is your certificate, you have gained paravidya. No such certificate exists. Because who knows? Only you know, no one else knows. You know? Yeah. Even the teacher assumes you know until you say, I don't know. So only you know. Nobody has to come and, you know, bestow this knowledge upon you because it is already you. It's not something waiting for a bestowal, or it's not something you inherit from the Guru. Because see, when the Guru gives up the body, there is a great clamoring for all the items used by the Guru. Yeah, and so the mala of the Guru, very highly coveted, you know, what is that, legacy. And then if the Guru had a drinking water glass, that water glass or cup of the Guru, clothes of the Guru, there is great clamoring between Shishyas. And if it's first come, first serve basis, the one who comes first cleans it all out, nothing left for the other one, you know. And so like this, you know, it's not something bequeathed by the Guru, left in your name. Guru leaves you one big, you know, self-knowledge here. I have given my mala to this one. I have given, you know, the Krishna image that I used to worship. This Guru is talking. I have given that to him. But this is my favorite Shishya. And I am going to give this fellow, what? Paravidya, I am going to bequeath. No such thing. Why? Because it's not a legacy that is received. It is not something bestowed upon you by either Bhagavan or Guru. That's why yesterday or whenever last week I talked about Atma Anugraha. It is something you allow. You receive and allow. So you have to be in the position of the receiver of something that is already received. This is the irony. You are receiving something that's already received. That's why more grace, self-grace is needed and self-allowing is needed. Because you are receiving something that's not only already there, but it's already gained. So the gain of the as though gain of something that's already gained is itself called Paravidya. Not any other reaching, not any other karma. There is not a whiff of karma needed for Paravidya to happen. And our friend was feeling a little sad. Which friend? Nanu friend. Yes, Nanu means who? The objector. Purva Pakshi. Purva Paksha. Now, you know, he was quietly listening for so long. But this verse has disturbed him and shaken him up deeply. This mantra. Why? Let us find out. Yeah. Nanu Rigvedadi Bahyaha Tarhi. No, there is no, it's feminine, so there is no, what is it, Visarga there. Nanu Rigvedadi Bahya Tarhi sa Katham Paravidya Syat
कथं परा विद्या स्यात्
मोक्षसाधनं च
मोक्षसाधनं च
या वेदबाह्याः
या वेदबाह्याः
स्मृतयः
स्मृतयः
याश्च काश्च
याश्च काश्च
कुद्रष्टयः
कुद्रष्टयः
सर्वाः ताः
सर्वाः ताः
निष्फलाः
निष्फलाः
प्रेत्य
प्रेत्य
तमोनिष्ठा
तमोनिष्ठा
हिताः स्मृताः.
हिताः स्मृताः.
Yeah, so this is a big nanu. Yes, a huge nanu, big objection. Nanu, indeed, what you yourself said. You means who? Fortunately, it's not directed at Shankara, it is directed at the Upanishad. He is not having, the objector is not having any problem with what Shankara is explaining. He is having a big truck with the mantra itself. And the mantra is very problematic for him because the mantra says that, this knowledge is different from the Vedas. The Veda is what? Apara or para? Apara. This knowledge is what? Para. So he says this is very problematic. And we have to look into these objections, he says. And then there are many objections hidden here, but let us look at them. Let us look at what he says. He says, Tarhi, therefore, sa katham paravidya syat. Because if this is outside of the Vedas, outside of the Veda means what you have to understand. Outside of the Veda is pramana, correct? What kind of pramana? Pramana in the form of words, shabda pramana. So if it's outside of the Veda, is it a pramana or not? It cannot be a shabda pramana because it is outside of the Veda. So you yourself said that Rig Veda, Aparavidya, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda and all the other things linked to the Veda is different. That was the Veda, this is Veda, this is different, and this Veda, this difference means this is Paravidya. All this you went and built this big mantra and you are calling it Upanishad, but where are we looking into this mantra? Where is this mantra located? In the Veda. So that mantra which says that everything is outside the Veda happens where? In the Veda. Look at your contradiction. Are you even listening to yourself? Are you even looking at yourself? Are you even seeing that you don't make the slightest of sense? Have you lost the little bit of tiny mind you had earlier? And all this lineage and everything you painted, Brahma taught this one, that one taught this one, Shaunaka went to Guru, and then, Guru started to teach the knowledge, and what is he teaching? Okay, 2 kinds of knowledges must be known, theek hai, alright. Fir kya? Then, fir kya means what? Then he says para and apara. Okay, what is para? Para you cannot find anywhere. Apara is everything else. Everything else is apara, including the Veda, apara, kartritva knowledge, apara, bhoktritva knowledge, apara, that which makes me into karta, bhokta, apara. And then where is para? Outside of the Vedas, by implication. And where are we reading that it is outside of the Veda? In the Veda. So if Veda is a pramana, if it's a means of knowledge, then if the para, whatever you are calling para vidya is outside of the Vedas, how can it be a pramana? That means Veda is not a pramana, correct? Yeah. No, but then if you say no, Upanishad is the pramana, Veda is not the pramana, then also you are having a problem. Why? Because that is called Ardhanda Nyaya. What is Ardhanda Nyaya? Very interesting logic. Somebody had some chickens at home. What do chickens do? Yes. So this one laid a nice fat egg. And this egg he wanted to give to his friend as a present. He says, my chicken has laid the egg. This is the first egg. You please have it. Friend was very happy. And he asked the friend, so what are you going to do with the egg? He says, since it's such a good egg, half of it I'm going to use to make a nice omelette for me and my family. And the other half I'll keep under some hay for hatching. This is called Ardhanda Nyaya. Is it possible to do that? Of course not. You know, it's also called Ardha Jari Nyaya. You know, this person went to the shop. Which shop? Beauty shop. And said, I need a facial. Why? Where? You know, how? Only for half of my face I need a facial. Why? Because all the wrinkles have come only on this side. This side is sweet 16. This side is full of wrinkles and spots and dots and whatnots. And so therefore this side I need the makeup and the facial and the, you know, whatever they put some, what is that called? Tox.
Botox.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah, I call it tox because it's toxic. Anyway, so for short. So this side you put the tox and this side leave it alone because this side is fine. That is called Ardha Jari Nyaya, same thing. So if Jara is happening, if aging is happening, it should happen to both sides of the face, correct? You cannot say one side of the body can defeat Usain Bolt in the Olympics. You know, this is the fastest runner. And in the other side of the body, you are going to be, you know, limping with a stick or crutches, better still. So you cannot say one half of the Veda is not Pramana and then the other half is Pramana, then it makes no sense. If it is a Pramana, the whole Veda should be a Pramana. If the whole Veda is Pramana, then it cannot be outside of this Paravidya. It has to give this knowledge. The whole point of the Veda is to give this knowledge. Because this knowledge is anadhigatam. Anadhigatam means it is not gained anywhere else. You have been, you know, whether we understand it or not, you have been, you know, splitting your head telling us that, you know. You can tell this, the Upanishad has got a splitting headache explaining this to us, whether we understand it or not. It is explaining, she has been explaining that this para knowledge is the only thing to be gained because it cannot be gained. The knowledge of you as unconditional love and compassion cannot be gained through any other way, through any other body of knowledge or any other body of action. You cannot gain this. You can only gain how? Through this means of knowledge. And now what? Vedabhahyaha. So the whole, if this knowledge is outside of the Vedas and you call the Veda Pramana, then if this knowledge is outside of Pramana, how can it bless me? And you cannot say only this knowledge is Pramana, then Veda is not Pramana. If you say that, then we have the half egg for hatching and half egg for cooking logic. You know? Ardhandaha prasavaya, ardhandaha pachanaya. You know, half the prasava means for reproduction, it is used. Pachana means for cooking, from pach to cook. Yeah, plus lut, which becomes ana. So, pachanam, you know, so this is what it is. So half for pachanam and half for prasava you cannot say. So similarly, half the Veda is, you know, most of the Veda is Aparavidya and only little bit is Paravidya. You cannot do that. This is a very sound, this Nanu has done his homework, you know. And he says this is not correct. This is not the way to look at it. And then what if we look at it like this? Because you come to a very big fault, a very big fallacy called Anirmoksha Prasanga. What is this Anirmoksha Prasanga? Because how will you gain moksha with this half-baked egg logic? How are you going to gain moksha? Where is the knowledge that is giving you moksha? What is its validity? If its validity is that of a pramana, okay, but you have yourself dismissed that by saying that this knowledge is outside of the Vedas. So if it is outside of the Veda, then how can it give me moksha? Because you said Veda is the only pramana and Vedanta is the pramana. So now if this is not there, then how can it give me moksha? And then you have been very prolific in quoting various people. You have quoted Manu, you know, you have quoted other Upanishads, you have quoted this particular Upanishad later on to show that you have read it, you have quoted later verses. You think I don't know some quotes? I also know one quote. In fact, this is a quote of all quotations. I'm going to silence you. You will not have a leg to stand on after this. You will just be, you know, just flailing for straws. You will be grasping at straws and flailing in your own, glub mess of arguments. In your own sinking arguments, you will sink. Wait till you hear this quote, he says. And this quote is a Maha quote. He says, it's from the Manusmriti. It says, Ya, Vedabhahyaha Smritayaha, those smritis that are outside of the Veda here means contradict the Veda. Should not be taken as outside means sitting out. Smritis are of course outside the Veda. Contradict the Veda. Smriti means what? You have to understand this. Secondary works of knowledge that are man-made, woman-made, human-made. Yeah. Vedas are apaurusheya, revealed. This is not, seen as humanly intervened. Human intervention is not there. They were given to sages in stages of meditation, in states of meditation. So they are not, seen as paurusheya or made by human hands, human minds. Smriti, we have so many smritis, Manusmriti, Yagyamalkya Smriti, and sutras. There is sutra literature. Puranas come under that. Ramayana and Mahabharata comes under that. Bhagavad Gita, even though it's a smriti, is likened to an Upanishad, but strictly speaking, it's considered smriti. So the smriti does not have the validity of what is called shruti, that which is heard. The primary texts are called shruti, secondary texts are called smriti. The secondary text or the human-made text does not have the same weightage of the shruti. So anywhere there is a slight contradiction or a disagreement, what do we go with? Do we go with shruti or smriti? Shruti. That is what it is. So shruti is baliya, it is stronger, and the smriti becomes weaker, especially in places where it contradicts the vision of the shruti. So here he says that, if you are outside the Veda, then you must not be Veda, you must be what? Smriti. You must be coming, the Paravidya must be coming under Smriti. But then, how can it give moksha? It cannot give moksha. And besides, he says, the quotation says, any Smriti, Smritayaha, Yascha Kascha, whoever they may be written by, whoever they might be, Vedabhahyaha, if they contradict the Veda, sa kudrashta, taha kudrashtayaha. Kudrashtayaha means they are giving wrong information. Kudrishti, wrong drishti. Yeah, ku. Whenever the upasarga ku comes, kutilayam gatihi means a crooked. It means crooked. So ku. Su is very good. Ku means not so good. Yeah. Kutarka, wrong logic. Kudrishti, wrong or vitiated vision. So that means if it is outside of the Veda or if it contradicts the Veda, that means what? It is not to be even entertained. And then further he says, Sarvaha taha nishphalaha. Nishphalaha means what? They don't produce any result worth talking about. Engaging in kudrishti, what result will it produce? Kuphala it will produce. Kudrishti, being exposed to kudrishti, will produce kuphala, correct? Yeah. So kudrishti and kuphala will make you what? Ka purushaha. Yeah. It doesn't become kupurushaha. Anyway, so yeah, it will make you an idiot, because being exposed to idiotic reasoning, idiotic knowledge, wrong, things will make you go follow wrong ways, correct? Yeah. Nishphalaha means they are as good as not having any effect. They won't have any effect. And what is the Veda? What does the Veda want to do? Veda wants you to have a good life. And not only to have a good life, but to have a good hereafter for those of those of the people who are interested in a good afterlife, also the Veda tells you how to work hard in this life so that you can enjoy coffee with Indra. Correct? It tells you all this. So it gives you a nice combo pack of this life and afterlife. How to ensure, to do dharma, karma properly, and to reach out actions and all these things, and to be a relatively, devoted, non-complaining being, relatively contented person. The first portion of the Veda is directing you to do all that. For the sake of what? So that after death you may have some, nice time. You can sing one bhajan with Lord Krishna, or do a little dance, or you can, shake hands with Vishnu, salute Shiva, wave to Lord Brahma. Hey, I heard you in the Mundakopanishad. Yeah, I know you. You authored a great book. You can tell him that. Where is Saras? Say, give my love to Saras. Who is Saras? For short form. So you can say all that. You can hobnob with the devatas. Have these Indians like these Mari biscuits, dip it in the celestial tea and have it, and have nice some hobnobbing with the devatas, with the celestials. You can enjoy all that if you, provided you do your work now. The Veda tells you all this, But this kind of a knowledge who wants, which contradicts the Vedas, at least if I was left to follow the Vedas, this is the half egg logic, then at least I would have been satisfied going my way, and then, packing something for the afterlife to be opened in the form of, the tin of punya is opened, and the tin of punya is opened, like you open with a can opener, except you don't know what you get. Can of what? Worms. Yeah, it could be can of worms. We don't know, but anyhow, but if you've done the right kind of thing, can of worms will not come. You'll get other nice can of goodies, some nice tin of mango, condensed milk, something nice. Yeah, maybe a nice tin of sweets, gulab jamuns. So many things are there. Many nice things come in tins. So you open your, tin of karma that you have packed for the afterlife, and certain things open up, aromatic things open up, and then what happens? Then you feel good. Correct? Yeah. So at least if I had followed the Veda as pramana, then aparavidya fine, but at least my life would be safe. I would not come to destruction. But here you say this is outside of the Veda, and then what is it going to give me? Nothing. And in fact, the Smriti says, Manusmriti says, which is an authority on all this, says, if anything is outside of the Veda or contradicts the Veda, do not touch it with a barge pole. Why? Because it will lead you to nowhere. If it contradicts the Veda, it will lead you only to one place, which is adharma. Because Veda is the author of dharma, really. So it will lead you to wrongdoings and wrong ends. Nishphala means kuphala. All things are wrong. And then what? As a result, what happens? He further waxes eloquently further. Pretya tamo nishtahitaha smitaha. Yeah. So what you wanted was jnana nishtha. But what did you get? Tamo nishtha. Jnana nishtha means being established in knowledge. And instead what you became established in? Big tamas. Yeah. Already I was sleepy. Especially after Sahana Bhavatu mantra, which is chanted when? At the beginning of the class. And then what? Now I find myself, even sleepy after the knowledge. Before the knowledge also I was sleepy. After the knowledge also I have inertia. What is the use? And here tamas doesn't mean inertia. Tamo nishtha means, nishtha here doesn't mean like jnana nishtha, commitment. Nishtha means they are only committed to producing the inertia that you are already sunk into. Meaning what? They are committed to more samsara. And if you read them, if you keep reading that as thinking it is para vidya, then what happens? Then you will be stuck. You are thinking it's para vidya. and then you are just going to have more and more confusion. More confusion is more tamas. More tamas means then you lose hope that anything will save you from this samsara, and then what? You become hopeless. That is also more tamas. And pretya, you can take it both way. Asman lokat pretya, asman lokat pretya, leaving this body. Also you are wandering around as a ghost. What kind of ghost? Tamasic ghost. At least if you are a sattvic, disembodied person, then that is when all the chai with the celestial people will take place. But here you are just neither here nor there. You are like Trishanku hanging around, and then this is not good. So, in other words, what? A big injunction, a stay order to consider this Paravidya. His objections are on two grounds. The first portion is that Paravidya, if it's outside of the Veda, then it is of no use, because Veda is the only pramana. This produces useless knowledge, even if you call it knowledge. What is the use of the knowledge that makes you totally useless? No use. So therefore, this gives rise to, it is not capable of producing moksha. Whether you understand moksha as a good afterlife or you understand moksha as having complete contentment in this life, it does not produce that moksha at all. So in other words, the first objection is what? If it is outside of the Veda, then it is useless in producing what your moksha. Your moksha is not produced. This fellow hasn't understood, it's not a product. But anyhow, it's not, your moksha is useless. You cannot say that this is going to give me that vidya, yaya aksharam adhigamyate. How can it give? It cannot give anything except a big headache, even in trying to understand this argument. Then the person will back off, right? You say, no, it is inside the Veda. Inside the Veda, but Veda and Vedanta are different. And you see, the Veda is all about karma and dharma, and Vedanta is for what? Is for the knowledge. Hey, make up your mind. Which part of the egg are you going to eat and hatch? There is another contradiction here. If you say it is inside the Veda, all right. We'll take that also, even though here it clearly says it's outside of the Veda. Even without glasses you can see that it says, that this is para and apara are distinguished. And what is tatra apara? He didn't say tatra apara, that a is there. Don't forget that a which has negative. Tatra apara, and he lists all the Vedas. No, but Upanishads are kind of in the Veda, kind of not. You cannot say kind of in the Veda or kind of not. Make up your mind. If it is outside of the Veda, it cannot give you anything that is hitam, sukham, nothing. Because it cannot give you anything that is valid for you. Because it is no longer, it loses pramanatvam, and if it loses pramanatvam, it becomes moksha prasanga. It has the fallacy of not being able to give you moksha. Because if you say moksha is only for with regard to pramana, and now this is not pramana, how is it going to give you moksha? Then you backtrack. No, it is in the Veda. All right, fine, even though it doesn't say that, I will agree with you. If it is in the Veda, then why did this idiotic mantra have to distinguish between para and apara vidya? Then you should not distinguish. If the distinction is made, then if everything is within the Veda, then why do you have to distinguish? Your distinction itself is wrong. He is going to say, let us read. Yeah, because he is not done. Don't think that just because he finished quoting, he is done. He just takes a little coffee break here. Iti cha smaranti. Yeah, then he has a sip of his ancient coffee, and then he says, Kudrishtitvat, Nishphalatvad, Anadeya Syat. Yeah, so this is just one argument. One argument is that it has kudrishti, means bad intentions. Why? Because only the pramana has good intentions. And if it is outside of the pramana, it has bad intentions. And bad intentions and bad knowledge produce what kind of results? Wrong results and bad results. So and then if bad results are what? Nishphala, useless. So first is it has the wrong intentions and therefore it has useless results. That's the first argument. Therefore, anadeya, this knowledge we should stop listening. Let us get noise cancelling headphones, you being the noise, and let us just go into a nice happy place inside ourselves. Let us stop listening, he says. Then he's not done, as I said. He's mounting another, argument. Upanishadam cha
Upanishadam cha
Rigvedadi bahyatvam syat.
Rigvedadipādyatvam syāt.
Furthermore, you are distinguishing the Upanishad from the first portion of the Veda, which is wrong. If you say Veda, it should include both. If you say egg, it should include the yolk as well. Even though it is possible to separate, really speaking, it doesn't. When you say whole egg, it should include both the things. Correct? And so, you cannot use the yolk for reproduction and the white for something else. So, this is why you cannot use the Upanishad. You cannot say that Upanishad is outside of the Veda. That itself is wrong. That itself is one more hidden fallacy, to be listed along with the other two fallacies of kudrishtitvam, nishphalatvam, and then Veda Bhahyatvam Upanishadam, third one. Meaning that the Upanishads are outside of the Veda. Who will believe you? Where are the Upanishads? Where in the Vedas? At the end of the Veda. So at the end of what Veda you have to say? So if you don't say book plus last chapter of the book, who counts like that? This is the book, and then what is this? That is the last chapter of the book. Nobody says book plus the last chapter. Only if you're idiotic you will say book plus the last chapter. Book includes last chapter or not? Yes. So what's wrong with you? Why are you saying Upanishad is outside? How can Upanishad be outside? Then he says, no, it is inside. If you say, he is anticipating, Rigvedaditvetu Prithakkaranam Anarthakam Atha Para Iti. Yeah, so the distinction between para and apara is untenable. Anarthakam means useless. It is useless. If you are going to build a big distinction, what is the distinction you are going to make? This is para, and then what is this? Apara. This is apple, and then finally I came round. And this is apple. What is the difference? This is apple. This is the head of apple. This is the bottom of the apple. This is apple. What is the use of making it if it's all apple? Apple and core. That is very interesting example. Apple and core. Who says that? Just the core is useless, correct? Yeah, because if you take out the core and take it outside of the apple, it cannot be of any use. What is it going to do? Nothing. At least apple has the ability to relatively satisfy your hunger, So you cannot remove the core outside of the apple. And if you say the status of the core is within the apple, then what? Then why distinguish apple and core? Apple includes core. So why are you making the distinction? So here, the core of the Veda is Vedanta. The core of the Veda is what? Vedanta. Because all the Vedas lead up to what? Vedanta. Because the Veda is preparation. Vedanta is the reason for which you got prepared. Veda is the dressing room. Where you put on your costume and everything, and then you're ready. What costume will you put on? Shama, Dama, earrings. Titiksha, necklace. Viveka, Chudamani. Viveka, head ornament, because it has to be the beacon that guides the way, big diamond that guides the way. Vairagya, crown. All these things you put out and come out, you put on the ornaments to come out and sit in front of the teacher and gain the knowledge, so that all these things will, come. Uparati, what is that? Ear cleaning device, so that all the nonsense goes and only good things are heard. Yeah, ear cleaning solution. And then along with inner resolution, we also need that, so that the karanas are all open and open to receiving this knowledge. And then what? Then we have this Shraddha, Ragadvesha, weed killer. Yeah, so all this we have, and then we come from the dressing room dressed in all the fruit of the Veda, and then it leads you to Vedanta. So even though they are one, they are kind of different, because as we saw in the introduction, do you see how apt the introduction was? Who remembers the introduction? Say yes. I remember. Say. Yeah. So in the introduction, he made a difference between the adhikari is different for both, he said. The qualified person for the first portion of the Veda is who? A karta bhokta. And the qualified person for the other half of the Veda is who? The one who wants to drop the karta bhokta and become the one who doesn't need to do anything. The one who is sick of doing is the one who is the qualified the person for the second half of the Veda. So this distinction is not anarthaka. It is in fact arthaka, because they are not two separate things. One leads to the other. And then, hello Nanu, we have to say to him, look at the context of the sentence, Nanu. And the teacher said, two knowledges just must be gained. Dve vidye veditavye. Tavya means two knowledges must be gained. We are not dismissing apara. Hello. We are not dismissing it. We are simply saying that the one leads to the other. Yeah. So please understand the force of his objections, because these are many objections. Usually we are only seeing one Nanu at a time. This is multi-storied Nanu. Yeah. He's got a big flat he owns. He's sitting on the penthouse, and then he's got a big flat apartment size objection. Skyscraper full of objections. Yeah. And so what are these skyscraper full of objections? First one, Kudrishti. Kudrishti means if you say all this knowledge is outside of the Veda, then it cannot help me. It contradicts the Veda, means it will lead me to dead end. It cannot help me. And then if it cannot help me, that gives rise to objection 2. Anirmoksha prasanga nishphala. It is of no use. How can it give moksha if it cannot help me? It cannot help me right here. It cannot help me in the hereafter also. I can't even pack some tin of punya jamuns to go and eat somewhere. I can't do that. So that is the second objection. Third objection is a very interesting objection. He says that if it is inside the Veda, if you backtrack and say that it is inside the Veda, that this knowledge called Paravidya is inside the Veda, is within the rubric of the Veda, then you have another problem. What is the third problem? Then why make a distinction between Veda as Apara and this knowledge as Para? So Adi Shankara is listening quietly, and then he is going to give the answer. Answer is very simple. Na Veda Vishaya Vijnanasya Vivakshitvat. I don't have to translate na, correct? Na, yes. Very good. He says no. Why? Vedya, not Veda. Vedya Vishaya Vijnanasya Vivakshitvat. Vivaksha means the context. Vaktumicha Vivaksha. Like Moktumiksha, Mumuksha. Vaktumicha. That which is the context, what is desired to be told here is called Vivaksha. So what is the context here? What are they desiring to tell? Vedya Vastu, that which is to be known. Correct? And what is that Vedya Vastu? What is it to be known? Vijnanam. What is Vijnanam? You. The Vijnanam is you. Jnanam, knowledge. When that V comes, it should be translated as W-E, V. Vijnanam, really, it means you. It means that knowledge that is directly internalized as yourself. That is Vijnanam. So, Vedya Vastu, that which is to be known, has the same status as you. That is not different from you. That which is to be known is you. And who is the knower? You. What is to be known? You. What is the subject matter of the Upanishad? You. You, all the way. It's all about tvam. And then, so that being the case, Vivakshitvat, and the Upanishad has the Vivaksha, has the desire to reveal you, and therefore, this is not a problem. I am not convinced. Well, I am not done. So, Upanishad, Vedya, Akshara Vishayam hi, Vijnanam. Yeah, stop there. Yeah. So, what is this Upanishad then? The Upanishad is nothing but Vedya Vishaya Akshara Vijnanam. So, this Akshara, which is that knowledge, is alone what is conveyed by the Upanishad. The Upanishad is not something that is outside of this knowledge. This Upanishad is this Upanishadaha for the Upanishad Vedya Akshara Vishayam Asti, Vishayatvam Asti, means that this Upanishad has the status of being that which is capable of revealing what? That which is to be known. What is to be known? Yourself. So that which is to be known, the Upanishad has the capacity to reveal. And how do we know? That knowledge which it reveals is called Paravidya, he says. So, Upanishada Vedya Vishayam hi Vijnanam Iha Para Vidya iti Pradhanyena Vivakshitam Na Upanishad Shabdarashihi. Yeah. He says, please understand, when we say the word Upanishad, we are not talking of the book called Upanishad, which is just a heap of words. Shabdarashi. We are not referring to the book called Upanishad. What we are referring to? That freedom recipe which is contained, which is really revealed as the truth of you. So we are making a very subtle distinction, Adi Shankara says, between the words. The words come into the category of Aparavidya, that which the words convey, or rather that which the words make you understand as the truth of yourself, those alone are para. So it's not just the Upanishad, the Upanishads may say Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Brahma, Ayamatma Brahma, Etat Vaitat, and hundreds of other Mahavakyas. So many Mahavakyas, so little time. Correct? It may say that. And you being an avid reader, people come and ask me, what shall I read? I don't like to listen. I am a reader. I like to read bedtime reading Upanishad. So what shall I read? What to say? Because this knowledge, if it was produced by reading, you can give some recommendation. Go check out Max Muller's original translations. That is whole, this is whole. When you take the whole out of the whole, whole remains. And when he says whole remains, not H-O-L-E, W-H-O-L-E. What did you understand? That is whole. This is whole. Okay. And you take the whole out of the whole. And what remains is the whole. And then you go loco. Listen, reading that. That's what it is. Instead of gaining lokas, you yourself go loco right here in this loka itself, you go loco. Meaning it's just maddening. It doesn't give you knowledge. This is the reason why the words are incapable of producing the knowledge. The words are just heaps of, sentences, like alphabet soup, yeah. Alphabet soup? To make children eat, you put some croutons in the shape of alphabets in the soup so that they will recognize and then get distracted. But that alphabet soup is not producing anything. You cannot sit and proofread that in the soup. Oh, there is a spelling mistake. Atma T has come before the A. I have to correct that. You cannot proofread the alphabet soup and look for typos there. You will be in the soup then. So the Upanishad is like alphabet soup. Only when it is handled, explained, and when it conveys that. Conveys means there is it's a twofold operation. There is a conveyor belt happens to be the guru, and then what? There is the recipient who takes this as, okay, this is my luggage. I take it off the conveyor belt, correct? I own up to it. And I know this is me, so you take off this you receive it from the belt, and then what? That is when that knowledge, that jnanam is converted into what? Vijnanam. It is internalized, it is received and understood. And so this process of conveying in a manner where it can be received, that is called para. That alone is para. We are not talking of the words of the Upanishad. Although the words of the Upanishad contain the power to produce that vritti, that mental frame through which this understanding can take place. It is still not, para unless that understanding takes place. That understanding, I am non-separate from Bhagavan, I am non-separate from everything, sarvam aham idam, everything is idam, sarvam is aham, all this is me alone, is non-separate from me, there is no other to cause sorrow or fear, there is no other. That otherness has gone. Means what? That is a twofold process. The process of conveying and the capacity to receive. And because there is the transmitter. Who is the transmitter? The teacher is the transmitter. And there is one who is receiving that frequency, that fine-tuned frequency. Yeah. AM, FM, like this we have in the radio. And in the olden times, you had to really, if you wanted one station, you had to really fiddle and make it, even in India you still have to do that. You have to fiddle and fine tune it to get that frequency, and then only that transmission is successful. And that transmission and the capacity to transmit, the Upanishad words have, but otherwise they are dead words. If that transmitter is not there, those words are dead words. And if the receiver is also not there, those words are not really, they have the potential to be paravidya. But then they become para when it is received, in that process of receiving that as the truth of oneself. So you have the transmitter and the receiver. And that magic that happens with a good weather, good weather, not outside, inside the head of the student, yeah. There should be no category 3 storm brewing. Then only the recipient is a true recipient. If there is a category 4 hurricane brewing inside the head, then the transmission is distorted. All this kar sound comes, and then you say, what? What did you say? What? Hello? I think we have a bad connection. You say this over the phone and you don't hear. And so similarly, if there is a category 4 hurricane inside the student's mind, then what happens? Then the Upanishad's words remain apara. Yes, para is what you make of the words in listening, in bringing with yourself the capacity to be a fine-tuned recipient. So you give life to the words in your receiving of it. This is so fun. And the teacher gives life to the words in the telling of the words in a way that the understanding takes place. And the understanding that takes place in the mind of the student, which is seen, which is recognized by the teacher. How is it recognized by the teacher? Suddenly his teacher had some, what is that called?
Radar?
ESP, extrasensory perception. How did you know? How did I know that the student understood? How does the teacher know that the student understood? So teacher became some kind of a clairvoyant? Yeah, no clairvoyance here, because that understanding is one. That self is one, and that you which the teacher is explaining about, which I am explaining about, is none other than me. That you is none other than me. That me is none other than you. And in that receiving and in that transmitting, there is only one I. The you becomes I. So then you say, I understood, and I also say, yes, I understood. That you understood, because it's only I. It's so fantastic. That is a vritti called akhandakara vritti. Akhanda means there is no difference, which knocks out the knower unsuspecting way. That's why the stories are important. That's why the jokes are important. That's why all these things, it's like when the parent feeds the child. This is not an American child, all poor thing is, imprisoned in one chair called high chair. This is not how the Indian children are fed. The mother or the father runs behind the child. And of course this activity cannot take place indoors, because then they will be tired after cleaning up. So you take the child outdoors and you run behind the child. Child will be doing its own thing, and the child doesn't want to eat, it wants to play, and it wants to be looking at the grass and running after butterflies and saying here doggy, here kitty. That is what the child is doing. It's totally in the world of the seen and the heard. And the parent, the caregiver, runs after the child and says, look at that crow. And the child says, where? And then you give it. And look, where did that butterfly go? Oh, what is that man doing? What is that uncle doing? Oh, here, one more bite. So the Upanishad is like that. Very loving and extremely good at reparenting this idiot, this ignorant idiot, the jiva. And this ignorant idiot who comes to the Upanishad doesn't want the Upanishad, wants to be entertained, wants to, wants to feel good and go off and do something else, doesn't want to be free, wants to be free ultimately, but on the surface has all kinds of tantrums. I will not take in this knowledge. And the Upanishad says, let's make a distinction. All this is para, apara vidya. Oh, yeah, really, where? Here is para. Suddenly it goes in without even knowing that you have this. Why? Because you cannot know you have this, because if you know you have this, then you don't have it. Correct? So the akhandakara vritti is a very smart vritti. You have smartphone, this is smart vritti. You have smartphone, you have smart bomb, but no, this is smart vritti. What does it do? It bombs the knower. Yes, the knower is gone. Only the knowing remains, and a great sense of oneness in the teaching situation. And that's why the people who are able to sense that as themselves, that's what keeps people logging on, keeps people coming to the class, because that oneness is, quote unquote, here we can say experienced, but that experience is seen as what? Later you say, oh, this is what it was, but at that moment it's you. It's you. That is what is called akhandakara vritti. A clear transmitter, a clear receiver, and the clarity in that reception and in the transmission converts the useless heap of words aparavidya into para, that knowledge through which that endless love and compassion as oneself is recognized as oneself. So there is all that oneness happening, and in that oneness, so happening means what? It's always happening. You know, here that knowledge of that oneness is communicated. And the mother Upanishad, feeding the child, when the child is least suspecting it, its hunger, its cravings, its longings are all gone. It's a beautiful, beautiful. And that is why this is called para. The rest of it is apara. So the Upanishad you can gladly put in apara, because that's why when you read it, nothing except a headache is produced. Yeah. What you get out of reading Upanishad is migraine. And then you wish it was somebody else's grain and not my grain. That's all you say. So that is why the teaching is a live shravanam. Yeah, livelier the better. And that is why in the beginning what happens, people only catch hold of the jokes. And sometimes people will say, I remember the jokes in the class. And in the beginning they enjoy the jokes. Then after that, because how many jokes will be there? 3, 4 same jokes, Yeah. People are obliging and they laugh, that's all. So then after that what? After the jokes have done the jokes are not useless, because the jokes have a place. The jokes are also selectively deployed, and the jokes have a place. You know how they have a place? Because they loosen up this tightly wound up fellow who comes to the class. Yeah, suited, booted and tied up in his own notions of who the person is. Reluctant to laugh, always suspicious, fearful, no shraddha, all tightly, I'm not going to be impressed, has already made up the mind at the door. Yeah. And such a person, such a person is told the joke, and then the person loosens up. Loosens up means that ahankara, that pramata, that knower is kind of, first it was an uptight knower, then it was a tight knower, that upasarga has gone, and then, tight knower, and then slightly loosened knower, meaning little relaxed. The jokes give that relaxation, and the jokes also distract the knower from wanting to hold on to the knowledge as an object. Yeah. They distract the knower enough so that the knowledge takes place as the subject, without the knower being in charge of interrupting or interceding that knowledge. Yeah. So this is how it goes. I'm just giving you the pedagogy. Don't think I sit and think, of the class, okay, after 9 minutes I will deploy this joke, after 10 minutes that joke. No, it just happens. Yeah. I don't even know what I'm going to say sometimes. That's why sometimes I laugh the hardest. So, because I too am hearing it for the first time. Bhagavan gives, it's all the grace of Guru and God. It comes. That's why I also laugh along with all of you, because I am also fascinated. And when you hear me laugh, you laugh more, because this is not a performance. This is not some kind of a thing you have to write down when I will deploy the joke, when I will tell a story. Upanishad herself gives. Yeah. Bhagavan gives, Guru gives. I just sit and that's all I do. That's all it is. That's how it is. And when you all start teaching, that's how it will be for you also. It will be just like that. Yeah. You will sit, it will come. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Before questions, one announcement. Tomorrow you can sleep in. Correct? Yeah. What time is class? 9:30 our time. If you are in the east coast, you can definitely sleep a long time. Yeah. 3 hours more than us you can sleep before the class. And so that is what 9:30 we will do Vedanta Dindima. That is what we will do. And this class will not meet until the 23rd week in April. That's a long time. Yeah, very long time, right? Yeah, what to do? Online when? How? Where?
I'm mixing them up.
Yeah. Yeah, it will meet on the, let me tell, just now, let us see, it's the 5th, 5, 12, 19th, 20th?
Yeah.
19th, 20th? Yeah, 19th and 20th or something like that, 20th, 21st, something like that. 19th, 20th it will meet. So tomorrow we can have Vedanta Dindima, we'll let this be, just listen to some previous classes, percolate. We'll just do Vedanta Dindima all of tomorrow. I had an idea of doing one class of this one also, but I think we'll let it be, because this is heavy stuff. Yeah. Let this percolate, we'll come back and see that. Yeah. Okay, questions are there? No questions, very good. Yeah, very good, even if there are very good. Tell me.
And so, this compassion is by nature,
Yes,
and so,
compassion is your nature. I'm only repeating it because people online ask me to repeat the
Okay.
questions. Yeah.
it's not my reacting to a situation because that's a movement.
It's not your reacting to the situation that is a movement, yes and no. It's not your reaction, correct, but it can be a response, which is different from a reaction. A reaction is a knee-jerk, surface level, ragadvesha type, action, in retaliation to something you observed. A response is more seeing the situation, seeing what can be done, seeing if it is in your place to do it, and if it is within your capacity and ability, and if it is the right thing to do, keeping in flow, keeping in view the cosmic flow of life, which is Ishvara. Yeah.
So, more a conversation
More a conversation means?
than a reaction, a response.
No, a response is
Responding is
Is a-
taking in what's
what's
available,
there. Yes.
putting it here,
Yes.
and then something comes back out.
Right.
As in conversation.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of another way. That
Right. Yeah. So that is a response. A response you take into account your own background, and if your own background has some, some scripts, some narratives of jumping to rescue everyone at all times, then that is very good to just keep and look. That is actually compassion for yourself. Yeah. So like that, everybody is different. So see where this is coming from, where the urge to act is coming from, and act when it's not an urge. That's a very nice thing. Yeah. When you don't want it, have it. When you want it, don't have it. It's a very good way to lead life. You may say it's boring, but it's not. It's very, very enlightening. Because whenever you want something badly, if you don't have it at that time, if you defer it, then something wonderful happens, because you grow in the process of that deferment. And then after that, when you don't want it, it doesn't catch you and destroy you. Yeah. It's very nice. Yeah, Yugadi, Shubha, Yugadi, happy Yugadi to everybody, to you also. Wonderful.